Sit on here. There we go. There you are. All right, y'all. What's going on? This is Matt Stevens. I'm here with Dr. Taylor Burrowes. She's a mental health and relationship or marriage counselor, as we would say. Taylor and I have known each other for about, 2 years now? We've known each other for about 2 years.
Yes.
Some drama on Twitter together.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're already good buddies, but I don't want to say that, but you know what I mean? Like, we know each other well enough that we feel like we're real life friends.
Yeah, we keep in contact.
Yes.
So I guess let's just go ahead and start. Like, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself, Taylor? Like, how did you get started doing what you're doing, and why did you decide to do or take this path?
I don't want to go all the way back to psychology and stuff like that, but maybe just the online part, because I find that is probably the most relevant for people. Because now I'm excited for you launching into your self-employment and stuff. Yes, I'm super excited for you, happy for you and everything. It's quite terrifying, or what do I usually call it? Like frightening but exciting, whatever that put together would be. And I think it's different for me as a therapist doing it online. Like, traditional therapists and therapy is a lot more rigid. It's a lot more structured, I guess, is I've never been a structured person. So this really suits my personality to be able to be a personal brand and for people to really be familiar with my lifestyle and who I am and my personality, and really choose intentionally to speak to me directly for my counseling and therapy services. So, a lot of us do consultations, but as a mental health professional and a marriage and family therapist, I feel that it's a really great way of accessing people online in the convenience of their own home and, all over the world. So there's no real limits. It's awesome. I'm excited.
Right, and I think it's just something that's growing. You can't even really label it as something that's growing for a specific industry. I think that eventually many industries are going to get into the personal branding, and the thing is, you're building a relationship. People are familiar with you from what you've presented online and whatnot, so that makes them feel comfortable with you, and they probably want to reach out to you because of that.
Yes.
I feel like that's something that's just going to continue to grow. So it's definitely a trend that is starting. And of course, you see fitness coaches and diet coaches and whatnot getting into it, and that's something that's been around for a few years now. But with your field, it's definitely, I see it as being something that's convenient for sure. So.
Yeah, and my philosophy has always been to live by what you preach, practice what you preach, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So I put it out there. So I model everything that I say and that I advise people on. I live out intentionally, authentically, day in and day out of my life. I'm not a perfect human being. I have moods, and I don't hide any of that. I mean, the only thing that seems odd, and I usually put this out there, and I'm fully transparent about it, is that I'm single and I'm divorced, right? So I'm very honest about that. But, life happens, and we have to recognize that we learn from mistakes. And even if sometimes they're not mistakes, they're just challenges and things that happen that are outside of our control, or we can't prevent certain things. So I have like a comprehensive sort of holistic life experience that helps to contribute to my ability to be of value to people, because I know what it's like to be married. I know what it's like to be single. I know what it's like to be divorced. So it covers a lot. I cover a lot of ground, cover a lot of niches or whatever.
Yeah, and it really is, authentic, just because you're owning those, and what typically people would consider as insecurities. You're letting them out in the open. You're comfortable with them, and people kind of see those imperfections as something that is kind of perfect too, because you own it and you're comfortable with that. So
thank you.
It's the same. It's the same way. Oh, you're welcome. It's the same way with I guess health and fitness too. I was not always in shape, so I know what it's like to be out of shape. It's no good. So
exactly, and it takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there, be like, look how no offense, bad I looked before.
Yeah, exactly.
Look how great I look now, right?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, so are there any type of like trends or what are you seeing that's going on right now that maybe is going in the wrong direction or things that are possibly going in the right direction? What is your kind of consensus on the relationship and dating field right now?
The thing that I'm focusing on most is challenging this idea of the casual sex phenomenon and the hookup culture. And there's so many different resources out there, and people are referring to this statistic and that thing and whatever. So there's a lot of misinformation
Uh-huh.
and disinformation, really. Like, there's just a lot of
Yeah.
variety. So it's like, what do you believe? And I try to encourage people to trust their instinct by developing their own set of moral standards and values and
Yeah.
looking at it from, a bigger picture, because I see it along a developmental sort of lifespan trajectory. And, especially for men, if we look at gender differences, men are going to play the field, and that's normal, but that's not everything. And so by the time you get into your 30s, you should really start to consider narrowing your focus versus broadening your focus and keep adding notches to that belt. So trying to challenge that lifestyle is getting a lot of feedback from both men and women. So men are really defending it's our sexual strategy, genetically, biologically, to play the field and sleep with lots of women. Don't tell us not to do it. You're just being,
Yeah.
solipsistic or whatever the word is. And then the women are like, what do you mean? We have the right to do with our bodies the way we want to do it.
Yes.
And I don't know. I just don't believe in that. So it's not about changing people's minds who are just dead set on doing that, but more about putting out another voice so that people who are questioning that or people who feel differently can stand on their own and feel like they're not alone.
Right. And I mean, the thing is, I mentioned this the other day in a tweet. What separates us from just being mere animals is the fact that we are conscious and we're aware, and we are aware mostly of the urges that we have, the biological urges that we have. And yes, it's I guess coming to an understanding of how they work, and when you understand them, you're able to control them more. But if you choose not to, I think it makes you more of just an animal because you're letting your biological urges control you, and it kind of makes you less human. Once you're able to understand those biological urges and then control them and really decide what would be best for you, then yeah. But the fact that we should just embrace those biological urges and let them, I guess, control our lives, it just doesn't seem right to me.
Absolutely. And I like that, we're kind of getting grouped together in some of these threads on Twitter because we share very similar views and beliefs. But it reminds me, did you ever read Lord of the Flies, for instance? That's just a good, easy reference for me
When I was
about,
young, I did.
yeah. So that was, a bunch of kids that ended up stranded on an island. It was all men. This was like a male group of, I think they were school, like students, and
Yeah,
then
there's
they
cool.
got. Right. So then they were younger, but once they were left to fend for themselves on this deserted island, they became very base and primal and went back to sort of their evolutionary roots of behavior and just
Right.
started like being violent and aggressive, and they had these territorial tendencies, and it just became chaotic, right?
Yeah.
And one of the morals to that story was really, you have to have some socialized sense of behavioral interaction. As a human being, we are evolved to have consciousness, like you were saying.
Yeah.
We have to be able to control certain urges, or we will literally just turn into a bunch of animals living in chaos and disorder. So we
Exactly.
don't want that. I mean, we don't want to say, let's be like we were a million years ago or however long it was. We
Yeah.
are humans who are civilized now. So we have to learn how to integrate all of that together to create the best possible outcomes.
Exactly. And the thing is, I think that once and, you have these people that are coming out and saying, I should be able to do this. I should be able to do that. Of course you should be able to. You should be able to do whatever the hell you want to do. But there are consequences to everything. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you right now you feel like you want to go ahead and let those biological urges take over. 10 years down the line, you don't know if you're going to look back and say, man, I really wish I wouldn't have done that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to think long term. And I think that's the biggest issue that we have right now is we're not thinking about our future selves and how it affect that. And if you look long term, you just think, you think, it doesn't seem like a good idea because who are we dedicating to? Where's our conviction at? Is it to the biological urges? Are we always going to feel that way? You know?
No, and I posted today, sort of comparing to women and the, hitting the wall, right? So if you're talking about comparing it genetically or biologically, evolutionary psychology elements that are used as rationale for it. For women, they have no qualms saying, okay, well, you hit the wall and then you have this tendency to settle down after you've ridden the carousel. And now you want to, make yourself available for a life partner and having babies. But it's the same for men. And how can you trivialize that? It's men just getting sick or tired and old and feeble and they give up on it. No, it's a genetic imperative as well to want to procreate and settle down.
Right. And I can understand, I guess, from both sides, and especially just being male, can definitely understand from a man's perspective that if a woman decides to do that, you do kind of feel that resentment towards you. You're just like, no, you made those, decisions, and the way that I see it is like the past is a good indicator of the future. And if you let that behavior, rule over your life, and now you want to all of a sudden make a change, it's like, I don't know if I really trust that. I don't really know if I believe that. And I guess it could probably say the same thing for women as well. Would you not?
Well, I don't see it that way. I find people change. That's the business that I'm in, is that I invest in people's change and I help them to change. And when you really learn a lesson through experience, you don't go back. So I don't see it that way. It's when people don't apply the lessons and when they justify them and they make excuses, then I would say, no, the likelihood is that they're going to continue to do this over and over again until they're able to face the consequences, like you said, and apply different behavioral strategies. So people who actually apply different behavioral strategies, if you compare it to fitness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just because someone was out of shape and overweight or whatever, they change their diet, they change their fitness routine, and then they commit to it, right? Like for most of the examples you probably work with, they stick to it.
Ideally.
Yes, it's usually the in-between stage that there's a lot of relapse, right? But once you get to that point where you don't even have to go 100% all the time, if you're not trying to compete and stuff, you can just maintain what you have and have those cheat days or whatever you want to call it. Like I believe in 80-20 living. So I do my fitness and my health, but I also allow myself certain things to enjoy life.
Yeah, and I guess it really just comes down to the person's ability to what are they willing to forgive, and so there's just it's extremely complex, I guess, situation, and I haven't thought too far into it, but it really just comes down to what type of habits do you have, and are you really over those habits? Because we do tend to have relapses, especially, and we know how men and women are. If the man is not handling himself well enough, she's going to be turned off, and then unless he picks it up, she's just gonna she's not gonna be implicit or explicit and let him know, like, hey, you step your game up. It's more of the implicit, and a lot of guys don't pick up on that implicity. So it's kind of the whole communication effort as well.
So important. Yeah.
It's complex.
But it goes both ways. So neither party should be getting complacent and not investing in the maintenance of the relationship, right? Because you do have to do that. And I was talking to somebody today, and that was a point that I made was it's not about not being yourself. You are yourself, but you absolutely have to continue to be disciplined in the things that are important, just like with everything else in life. And it's not a man or a woman thing. It's both people. Like for women, we should not give up and get lax on keeping ourselves attractive and,
Absolutely.
good natured, right? So we still need to shave our legs and
Mm-hmm.
attend to our beauty routine and have nice wardrobe to look nice. And also then keep up the house or make sure that we're in a good mood and not like all over the place and
Mm-hmm.
regulating ourselves. So those are the things that we have to continue to do, not just for ourselves, but to make sure that we're a good partner for whoever we're with. But men also then have to do the same in the way that would be appropriate to them. And women tend to, women don't tend to cheat if they're getting attention, if they love somebody. I mean, that we don't have that biological drive, right? So men are the ones that will slip up more often than women. So that fear that men have, that just if women, I don't even know, everyone has a different like number in their head for what is promiscuity, which is why I did that poll the other day.
Yeah. Okay.
But let's say for you don't have to say, but let me just hypothetically say, let's say you were uncomfortable if your girlfriend said she had sex with 10 partners before you. Okay. So let's say, for whatever reason, she didn't know any better. That's just what everybody was doing. She wasn't really trying to be promiscuous, but it would seem normal for her depending on the people she was with at the time in college or whatever. And
Right.
so now it's like, maybe like in the past 5 years, she's only had sex with 2 people in the past 5 years. So to me, it's also temporal. So you have to, if I don't even really promote asking your partners how many people that they've slept with. I think that's silly. That's like way too much information. You should be able to tell by the way a person acts, like if they're moral or not, or
Yeah.
trustworthy or not. So I think that's irrelevant information anyway, and it just causes trouble and unnecessary conflict. But if you were to find out, let's say you knew she had 2 boyfriends in the past 5 years and she only had sex with those two people and didn't cheat, but maybe like before that she had 10 partners. You know what I'm saying? To me, it's more
Yeah.
what was recent that matters, the behavior that's more recent.
True. And the thing is, that's typically red flag behavior, and is when we are promiscuous and when you aren't serious about having a relationship. Now, if a girl that, just personally, if I was dating a girl and she had, 10 relationships or whatever in the last 10 years, I wouldn't be, upset or unforgiving, because those relationships would have been serious, and that's someone that she shared, emotion with and attachment with. And I know a girl probably wouldn't have 10 relationships in the last 10 years, but just the
I'm
number.
sure they're out there.
Maybe so, maybe so. But the thing is the fact that she was in a relationship, and that to me is forgivable. But if a girl goes out and gets it on with like 20 dudes in a year, that's just, to me, that's red flag behavior. And even if it was, let's say, 5 years ago, it's like, where do you draw the line of what you can forgive or not, for that red flag behavior, and what is considered red flag behavior for men and women?
It varies, right? Because I don't, let's say, if that's how you felt about her, then if your number was 25, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just because you're a man, does that make it different? Yes, there is a gender difference.
The double
Yes.
standard I think that we have as well is that it's a little bit more forgivable for men, and as unfair as that may seem, it is kind of just the way it is. And no,
Yeah.
it doesn't make it right, but it is just the way that we have seen things, and I guess how things have been in the past.
Now, I don't disagree with you. I think that there is a difference, and that's
Mhm.
okay. But what I'm saying is, what do you call it? Like, weight it. Let's weight it.
Yeah.
Let's say the woman's is 10 max, and
Uh-huh.
the man's is 25 gets promiscuous, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, if there's a double standard, but it can't be yes or no. There's going to be some gradient, right? So
Uh,
we have to find the comparison of converting to the other gender, is what I'm saying. Just to have a conversation about it hypothetically.
yeah. Because the thing is, and I guess what I kind of refer to when talking about this is that, a woman can only be pregnant with one man's, child for, however many, 9 months, 10 months or whatever. And of course, she can't have any children around that time, like at all. But a man can biologically, it's possible for him to impregnate multiple women at a time. And it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't make it right. We are definitely, more evolved than that psychologically and whatnot. But biologically, that was just I guess the reference that I've always gone back to be able to look at the situation. And like I said, I think that may have a lot to do with, the double standard that we have. Would you agree?
Well, I know paternal proof is an issue, but again, if she hasn't had sex with anybody else in the past year, it's your child, right?
Oh, you're right.
So the paternal proof thing only goes to a year, not even that really. So when just using what you were saying, it's interesting that you said it that way, but a woman can have sex when she's pregnant. She just can't get pregnant.
Right.
Again, I mean, unless I don't know if there's any kind of anomaly situation, but generally speaking,
allow her to get pregnant by another man while she's
but
carrying.
you can still have sex with another man.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at it just for procreation, okay, so a man can't give birth, but he can impregnate, and he can impregnate multiple people, and a woman can only hold one man's child at a time. Yeah. We're thinking. But I think that's going very, very, very technical.
And I guess the whole saying, and I know you've heard the saying, a key that can open any lock is a useful key, but a lock that's opened by any key is a useless lock. You've heard that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's something along the lines of that.
No, totally. I mean, to me, I just think it's about your approach to relationships in general, right? But the question that you're asking is if a person changes, or if a person, like, you can have a good person who does bad things. Do you know what I mean? So whether it's about sex, or whether it's about crime, or whether it's about hurting people over, I didn't want to say a curse word, but, whatever the bad stuff is that you did at some point in your life that you then start to question and regret and you want to change, that is what you're asking. Can people actually be a good person after making mistakes that they regret? Absolutely. So saying it's red flag behavior, whether it's sex or whether it's any of those other bad things, means it's a bad idea during the time that it's happening. You don't want to get with someone who's in that mindset right now. You don't want to get with someone who's often, committing crimes. You don't want to get with someone who's intentionally hurting people. You don't want to get with someone who's, having lots of sex right now. But eventually, if someone just learns their lesson and changes their behavior, there's no reason you should hold their past against them as red flag behavior.
Yeah, and I think where guys have the problem is that, they believe that their commitment is their, I guess, strong point. And they don't want to give that commitment to someone they don't feel deserves it. And it's like, you went off and you did all that, I want to reward my commitment to someone. And I guess, you still could reward your commitment to someone who, you could forgive and whatnot. But a lot of
What are you forgiving, though? I don't understand. They didn't do anything to you. Like, I just think it's setting us up for failure as a human race. Because if we cannot, actually make mistakes, then you're creating a human race that is going to be so anxious and really they're not fully developed. Like, you can't be perfect. You can't be a perfect human being. You have to be able to be flexible and adjust to different variables. But what it comes from is the male insecurity. That's what it comes from. And so men are just using it as an excuse when it's just a way to rule out a risk that you're conjuring up. Like, well, she was like this back then, so she's going to do that to me. But there's no real proof of it, just because, whatever, you're making up some arbitrary number. She's not a virgin, right? She's not a virgin, so I can't trust her.
Yeah, I mean, and that's how it seems like with a lot of guys. But no, I'm just, from what I've read and the conversations that I've had, especially with having gone in the red pill and haven't looked into that forum or whatever for years now, but I was exposed to it a long time ago, and it does make men insecure when they sit there and they talk about that, and they're throwing around all these terms and ideologies that are they don't teach forgiveness. They don't talk about forgiveness in there. And so you still have those guys that carry those around. And I guess that's where a lot of those conversations come from. Yeah. But I guess really what it comes down to is what we were talking about earlier. And this arbitrary number is, what is that number, and what would you consider as red flag behavior that would either be forgivable for someone's past, or would they still be able to carry on? Is it going to be something that you should be wary of? You know what I mean? Like, and I guess that's really kind of the point that I was making. But I do understand that people do have the ability to change, and people do have the ability to forgive for the things that they've done in the past and whatnot. It's just where some people draw the line and whatnot. You know what I mean?
It's a personal choice, but it's not about forgiveness. It's about trust, and it's about acceptance, and it's about evaluating a person as a whole person. Like, if that's the case, then we should be coming with, people get with people who have STDs all the time. Do you know what I mean? So it's a personal choice. It doesn't mean that, you should rule someone out because of XYZ information about them, but you're going to see, do you love them? Do they respect you? Do you have all the qualities that, a commitment requires? Do you want the same things? Are you willing to say, you know what, this is a deal breaker for me? And I want to get back out there in the market and find somebody else. That's a personal choice, basically. But none of those things mean anything. That doesn't indicate that it's a bad risk. It's just a level of comfort that you have Like, the question I ask people when I'm talking to someone in counseling is this the person you're willing to put everything you have on the line for?
Right.
So, given all the information you have and all the information you don't have, is this the person you're willing to put all that you have on the line for? And a lot of the times they're like, yeah, I do. And sometimes they're like, no, why do I want someone and usually this is when it's the right decision. When the person is lying to them, when the person is back and forth, hot and cold, when they're doing shady behavior now, then it's a bad gamble. Then they're like, okay, yeah, maybe they have a kid with someone, maybe they're hanging out with, some like a baby father or whatever. Then it's like, no, this is not a good enough situation for me to put everything on the line for. But if it's a person that literally with you matches all of your hopes and dreams, but there's some information from their past that you would have preferred didn't happen, you're being too picky.
Probably right. So how long would you say it would take typically, or at least would a healthy amount of time be to really try to get to know someone before you really make that call? How long? I know it's probably different for everyone in different situations and whatnot, but from what you've seen, is there any type of, window or anything like that you would consider?
When you live together, you really do get to see the reality of a person's psyche. So as much as, there's a value system around like living with someone before marriage or whatever, and that's a person's choice not to do that, but you do get a lot of information that way. But you can get that information without it if you spend a lot of time with them, if you go away. Right, exactly. If you travel with them. So if you don't want to cohabitate and you want to just get that information, go travel with them, have novel experiences, go through stress with them. That's the most important thing. So don't create a barrier and build a wall between you and another person that you're dating because you're going through something stressful. Invite them into that so that you can see, how do they handle this? Do they make a good partner? Do they help you problem solve and all that sort of stuff? Are they supportive?
Yeah, because that's not only that's how you learn about yourself as well. You put yourself in tough positions. Yeah. So it's when you go in those positions, it makes sense. You put yourself and that person together in a tough position. You're going to find out about how compatible or what is the chemistry between us really. And that brings me to my other question is compatibility. And I've tweeted this before, and I don't know if you've seen it. I say when it comes to nature, opposites attract. When it comes to nurture, like attracts like. And it's probably more from the 80-20 rule that we were talking about earlier. But compatibility and chemistry, and I've kind of pondered this on my own time, is I feel like compatibility would align with nurture, but chemistry is kind of, it's tough to draw a line there. Like, would you consider that nature, or well, how would you consider being able to tell the chemistry between you and another? And how would you?
I think it goes back to the biological versus the socialized element, like the consciousness. So I would say, yeah, like you got to have that unexplainable, undeniable chemical sort of magnetism for a person. Emotion. That, yeah, you really got to have that element. And just to be transparent about my experience, I did not have that with my husband, my ex-husband, right? So that was a big learning thing. I learned that having all of the friendship and the commitment and the loyalty, and I mean, I'm not going to go into that, but there were a lot of things that were wrong. But the one major thing that was obvious from the beginning that we should have known better is we never had that. Or I never had that for him, but he knew that. He knew that going into it, but he still kind of put me on a pedestal and wanted me badly enough that he let that go. And it never came. It never developed. So.
And I see it as a more natured aspect, because that is something that you just feel attracted to, and it's emotional. It's something that we can't really measure or explain. If we're compatible, it's, hey, we like some of the same music, and that's something that we could put numbers on, but with emotions, it's like, it's really kind of a feel of, how do we mesh? And so, I guess you could have high chemistry with someone and then be terrible for you, but in your case, it was having maybe the compatibility without the chemistry,
No, we didn't even have the compatibility. So that's double strikes. We have very, very, very different lifestyles. He's inactive and I'm super active, and he's, has a huge, massive family. I know. So yeah, I mean, that was a very stupid decision, but I made it at the time. I thought I was doing the right thing. Anyway, so yes, you have to have both elements. You have to have the chemistry and then the compatibility. Like you're saying, I think that's a great way of describing it. The nurture being the compatibility, that's more the same, having the same likes, having the same hobbies, although, you can have different interests, but the values definitely have to be the same. And what you want out of life. So if I want a sort of like I'm not so much the white picket fence girl. I'm not, even though I'm a marriage therapist, I promote long-term relationships and monogamy. I'm not particular to marriage, personally. Like I just want to, pardon?
Tradcon, maybe. I heard that word. That term thrown around a lot,
I don't know that I fit into that category, or that's not what I want necessarily. Yeah.
Right.
So I'm definitely more of a, I don't know. Like my personality is more free spirited, I would say. Yeah. But I have traditional elements to me. So I need to find someone who has kind of a middle ground on things as well, who's willing to be spontaneous and travel and just do different things and always kind of be, looking at something cool and exciting. And I get bored, so like, I don't want someone who's just going to be in one place for the rest of their life doing the same thing. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
what are you thinking? You look like your wheels are spinning.
Oh no. I mean, I guess, what I was gonna say was, I guess it's kind of tough to find both, but you'd be willing to make exceptions, I guess, for some compatibility. You're not going to be exactly alike, but there's definitely got to be. I think there's definitely got to be certain traditions and healthy traditions that still need to be established. I guess from a societal aspect, we see. And I guess, from the controversy that we've been a part of, we see that these traditions just want to be thrown out the window, and we can't necessarily do that. It's just not healthy, you know? So which ones would you say are the ones that we should probably deal away with, and which ones are the ones you say we should probably keep?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of the more traditional elements of not encouraging women to get out there and, go to school full time,
Mm-hmm.
leave their family, be on their own, and just work, like focus on being a competitor in the male dominated world of work. There's so much emphasis on that, which is how I got to where I am. Um, and I think it's great to be successful and
Absolutely.
self-reliant, self-sufficient, but not like independent, like you don't need anybody and you want a man who's going to basically be your personal assistant for you to get all of this stuff accomplished. I
Yeah.
think that's a very unhealthy perspective that most
Absolutely.
now modern feminists that don't realize they're feminists have. They really want like even if they both have jobs, they still want the husband to be their sort of support system and boosting their success. And
Yeah.
it's a little bit different like when you are able to have that dynamic where the man is the leader and you're the co-leader is what I like to say, so it doesn't feel like it's leader follower but co-leader.
Mm-hmm.
And the captain and co-captain and all that sort of stuff. And you might not have the same mission in regards to, you could have different interests that you do as well, but it's
Yeah.
going to be secondary, not like you're taking time away from the family, you're not sacrificing family, or taking away resources from your husband's mission to do your own thing that sort of puts you in an individualistic mindset, because that's really
Yeah.
dangerous when
It's,
women start
it's a
going
team.
that. Yeah, exactly, you have to be a
Yeah.
team. So those traditions are very, very important for healthy marriages and healthy long-term relationships. And it takes sort of prevention to do that. So you can't just all of a sudden decide to do that when you're married very easily. So you have to set out from the dating stage
Mm-hmm.
of learning what those things are that are important to you, and really being future focused when you're dating is who's going to align with those values and who's going to want to stay at home, maybe do their own business or do something part-time that just sort of
Yeah.
adds stuff to the whole household rather than take away. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's completely disregarded, you know? I mean, that's something that you definitely do on the side, but you have to be able to keep that in mind is, hey, do I want a family one day? Am I making a foolish decision by, excluding that from my life right now? Am I going to regret that? And that's another thing, I guess, a point that I was going to try to revert back to from the beginning of our conversation is, are we thinking long term here? You know? And it is kind of rough. I think that the dating aspect, especially with the way that men are and that women are nowadays, it's tough. And you have certain variables that come into play, like the internet, and you got Tinder and Bumble, and the fact that guys are afraid to walk up to a damn girl now. You know, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's I think that especially women, the one that are the more dominant roles and the ones that are a little bit more confident in themselves, and I guess have the healthy amount of masculine tendencies that they should have, are intimidating these guys that have more feminine qualities,
Mm-hmm.
And you can't have that. You have to have the guy be comfortable in his masculine to be able to walk up to a girl and say, "Hey, I think you're attractive, and let's go talk." And that's scary for guys to do nowadays. So like it starts in dating, and a lot of people, I guess, miss out on that, or at least have bad experiences and just put it off until later. And it's like, it doesn't need to be put off. It needs, you need to grow. That doesn't give you the ability to learn from your mistakes,
Right. And when men are developing themselves, it's really important for them to explore and try, really go for it, really
So
just
yeah,
be in that warrior conqueror mindset, right? But for
yes,
women, that you can't tell women the same thing. And this is where I want to revert a little bit, encourage women to say, wait a minute, you can be successful, you can take care of yourself, but
mhm,
you can do it in a way that's going to preserve your future as a wife and mother,
yeah,
or whatever, like you're going to be able, I think it's important for women to be encouraged to, whether they live at home or not, really nurture their family of origin, be family oriented, learn to take care of themselves, but not necessarily, be CEOs and whatever, all those like types of things. Because then there's a lot of sacrifices there.
And I think women have a difficult time of switching. And I've seen women that could do a really good job of it. They can handle it really well. They have that masculine energy about them. And then, when they go home, they can turn it off because they have a masculine guy at the house that they can be their feminine with. But a lot of women don't have that. They just remain in their masculine the entire time. And so it's tough, I guess, when you get stuck in that. And that's a tough thing to deal with, I guess, is switching back and forth. You know what I mean? Do you see the same thing?
Yeah. So everyone has the masculine and feminine, and everyone's different in their fluidity with it. And, with someone who's like myself, who's successful, who's got a strong personality and very outgoing and extroverted, I have a lot of those tendencies. But when you date and when you have a partner, you have to show your vulnerable side as a woman and be able to have softer tendencies with him. He has to be more masculine than you're most masculine. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So that's super important. And a lot of women don't. They go for the weaker man, and then that creates disaster in the long run.
I think that and I don't know who I brought this up with the other day, but it's this domination factor. Like, women are trying to I guess not necessarily like tame men's masculine side, but they go for the domination, and they go for the power or the control, but they don't really want it, and it's like they need someone to tell them no, and they have respect more for a guy when the guy tells them no, and he keeps the power for himself, you know what I mean? But I feel like there's always that struggle there that they want more,
And I would go even further with that. I've talked to people about this too, who are, let's say they didn't follow this path from the beginning, but now they're coming to understand what's wrong with the dynamic. And so, it's a slower process. You have to kind of be careful not to push too hard, too fast to change it. But the women don't even recognize what they're doing.
No.
So it's not that they don't even, women don't like to be told no. And it's important for them to have those boundaries and to develop that respect, to see that the man needs to be the dominant one. But what they need to go even further is to want that, not just to be told no, but they shouldn't even need to be told no, because they should want the man to be in the lead. So at first, I think it's, allowing women to experience it for the first time of not having to be in control feels amazing.
Because that allows them to be in their feminine, and maybe not necessarily telling women no per se, but just saying I got this, and something along the lines of that, like, I've got this, you just relax, but like I mentioned, when they're not dating and they're not able to get a feel for that dynamic, they're just going to continue to develop on that masculine side, is what society keeps pushing them to do. Go get your career, go get a job, and become dedicated to corporate America. It's like, guys, we don't want a girl that's like that. I mean, like, unless she can healthily switch back and forth from her feminine to her masculine.
So this is what I work on with my single ladies that I have, my clients who are single ladies. For instance, I spoke to someone recently who, she's working, she's on her own, she's going to school, trying to be like a lawyer. And so she's like, well, how do I, if I'm not dating and I'm not sort of, what else do I need to work on to be a better woman if I'm, not with someone yet? And I'm like, well, I mean, some of those qualities that they're, sort of enlightened qualities, and they make you more integrated as a feminine woman, even though you have all these other ambitions and abilities, it's, giving back. So I suggested volunteering. She never thought about that, and especially it would line up with that kind of work, is how to make being a lawyer long-term a prospect that you can do. Is maybe I can serve on a committee. Maybe I can volunteer for domestic violence shelters, something that would give back and it doesn't take away again. Like, you can do it, you can get something really beneficial of value from it without it being, you're going to be a partner in a law firm and make $1 million a year.
I think of let me see, how can I explain this? The way that I've learned the masculine and feminine dynamic is that the feminine is wanting to to take things in, indulge in, let's say that you are drinking wine or chocolate, or women tend to get together and go get wine with each other, and they indulge in the feminine, and men are very, I guess, we're penetrating everything. We're going into the unknown, venturing into the unknown. We're conquering our goals, and I think now we're seeing, and I see this a lot, a ton of guys that want to indulge, and it's like there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like when you do it all the time, and you see these men, like they get big and, or, not in the good way, and then they become more feminine, and they are not able to be the leaders that women need them to be. But what was I getting to here? There was a point I was going to make, that the thing that you said.
Well, men thrive on challenge, for one thing, right? So women don't. We don't really. I don't think we blossom under challenge, and that seems to be a little bit of what you're talking about.
Pressure. Need to be relieved of the pressure, right?
I believe so. I mean, I think it's good to be resilient in the face of stress and all of that stuff. But for a woman to seek out stress, I think deteriorates our mental health and our overall health in general. We are about nesting and nurturing for the most part. So when we have to go out there, I mean, I'm not trying to say like women shouldn't be in the military. Like, I'm not going that far. But generally speaking, those women are going to be hyper masculine.
That's true. Yeah.
Right? So when you encourage women to do masculine things, their energy is going to skew, like what you said. So when I talk to women who, let's say, they're determined to stay in that type of field, I asked them to do exactly what you think. What you said before was, what are you doing as soon as you leave the office or the hospital or the military or whatever? Like, how are you then? Do you let down your hair? Do you put on a skirt? Do you bake some cookies? And not that I'm saying you have to be so stereotypical, but you have to balance that. If you don't take a certain effort to do the complementary of that, you're not going to be in a healthy frame of mind, and it's going to erode your mental health and the state of your relationship. And it's also going to push the man to be more feminine. So you might not like baking, so do something else. Do gardening, do some kind of crafting. It could even be enjoyable. Go to the spa, get some wine, have chats with your girlfriends. But you have to make an effort to invest in your feminine energy.
And I guess that's the point that I was trying to make, because you mentioned, volunteering and giving, and that is kind of the nurturing aspect of as well. And I guess that's not necessarily, you wouldn't consider that indulgent, but it's more of like, hey, how can I take care of you? And I think that's feminine. And so, like, when they do volunteer, at shelters and whatnot, that is embracing their feminine, and it's not something that they necessarily have to do or feel pressured to do, So
any kind of nurturing is good, and that's why, it's child rearing is a very stereotypically feminine thing to do. It doesn't mean that men can't, but men parent in a different way, and you work together as a team. But let's say you have a parent, like the mother, she parents in a very masculine way. She's not super nurturing. There are lots of women out there like that just sort of part-time parent because they're so involved with work and other activities that it's really, really sad to see them put their children almost second or third or whatever the case. Yeah. So where, usually they end up in therapy, so they're not doing that well, right?
No. That's terrible for kids too, I mean, and I just see like this kind of cycle happening where we do have these dysfunctional relationships, and we've had them for a long time. Don't get me wrong, but it's putting an end, trying to put an end to that cycle. Is can we have children, or can we give children a loving family and a loving environment, and that takes the mother and the father being able to cooperate and being attractive with each other, because not only that, the kids are watching them. The kids are learning about the dynamic from their parents. And my parents were divorced, so I kind of missed that. And I lived with my mom, I think, until I was about maybe 12. And then I lived with my dad. I got in trouble with like the law when I was 12. And she finally decided that she couldn't handle it. So she let me go live with my dad, which I think was a good transition. But I didn't get to see like that healthy masculine and feminine dynamic because they were divorced. And my dad dated women and my mom dated men, but it was like, okay, that's still not mom and dad, So it's like you have that for other children as well, and they're having a tough time developing. That's just going to play on to the next generation. So it's like, who do we have teaching them about this stuff? And I guess I know we have things online, but we still have that trash online too, the misinformation. And it's like when I was looking at my diet, there was so many contradicting articles. It's like, where do we draw the line? Where do we say, okay, no, we got to get this crap out of here? And what, is going to resonate with people? And I guess it kind of resonates with their insecurities as well, because, you have the red pill that attracts men and that says, oh yeah, don't go with this girl if she's, slept with however many guys. You can never forgive her for that or something, But it's you just see it playing out in the future, and it's like, how is all this going to play out when you have the internet as an interesting variable playing into all these things,
It's definitely an issue, but I see it as having taken effect all this like 70 years through the generations, but now hopefully it's going to improve, and I see things as changing. So if we as adults who are looking to find partners then find the partners that agree with the same values, our numbers are growing because people are seeing it. It's becoming much more mainstream now in different contexts. People are talking about the red pill. And it always surprised me when I sort of hear it, or even just the ideas and not necessarily the labels.
Yeah.
So I do feel like that momentum is shifting. And so as we then partner appropriately with persons that, align with these values, we're going to be having children that are raised in a healthy home. So I think it's going to be better in the next 70 years. And hopefully we've learned our lessons as a human race to not repeat them.
Yeah, I guess only time will tell on that aspect.
I'm just worried about me and doing my part to help.
Me too. Me too. I mean, they can have theirs and their problems and whatnot. I'm doing mine. So I guess we have time for maybe just one more question. And I guess, from a woman's perspective, what's one thing you would kind of want to deliver as a message to women and that are still in the dating realm and still out there trying to find a good guy? What's something that you would want to tell them?
Well, you really got to know yourself. This is true for men and women. It's not really gendered and like as a whole, but it's how you do that. So being able to figure out what is the best balance for you, what are your deal breakers, and really be honest about it, because a lot of things are just wants, they're not needs. He doesn't have to be 6'2" or 6 foot tall. Like, you can actually come up with some more meaningful standards that you're looking for without it being like a checkbox list, right? Like, it's just, it can come in any kind of package as long as certain things are there. And so you have to have more of an open mind about it and take your time. I think the most important thing with women, the way that we're different in approaching relationships, is that we work backwards. We are basically so desperate for this love and this relationship that we're just, instead of looking for a needle in the haystack with our magnetic amazingness, or whatever you want to call it, like our optimized self is just going to attract that needle in a haystack. We basically just step into the haystack, and whichever piece of hay sticks to us first, we're going to be like, try to make that a relationship.
Try to make,
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
we need to turn that around and be way more intentional with this process.
Absolutely.
So that we can be comfortable in our solitude and comfortable sitting back. Like in the old days, a woman would just prepare herself. She would be pristine and virtuous, and she would be beautiful, and she would be doing lots of things that men would be attracted to. And then they would vet them as suitors. Then she would be courted, right?
It was absolutely, yeah.
So we need to go back to that, somewhat of a modern version of that system, where we wait for the right person and not just go out there and try to make it work with any Joe Schmo that gives us attention.
I completely agree. I think that is a very healthy perspective, and I think it's going to take guys kind of taking control as well, which I think, from a leadership aspect, that's what we're lacking here, is the masculine leadership. But
I'm with you.
We're working on that one.
We've got to work together too, right? So that's what this is all about.
And we need to do this again sometime, for sure. This is an interesting conversation. I really appreciate you coming on and talking to me. I think we probably answered a bunch of questions here for people. And like I said, let's do it again sometime. And thank you.
Thank you as well. It was fun.
All right, Taylor. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.